For 16 years, I believed my son's anger was just love in disguise. I told myself he didn't mean it, that every slap, every shout, every tear was just a bad day. But the night he raised a wrench at me, I finally saw the truth. This wasn't love, it was survival. And that was the night I decided to choose peace over pain. I never thought my own son would one day raise his hand at me. But that night, when he pushed me so hard that I hit the floor, I realized the truth I had been running from for 16 years. My son didn't love me. He needed me, yes. He used me, yes. But love? No. Love doesn't make you cry yourself to sleep every night. Love doesn't make you afraid to speak in your own home. As I lay there on the cold floor, the pain in my back spreading like fire, I heard his voice again, cold, sharp, and full of anger. "You're lucky I didn't throw you out this time, old woman," he said, slamming the door behind him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him. "I carried you in my belly. I gave up everything for you." But my voice refused to come out. I just stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, when did my son stop being my boy? When did he turn into a stranger? That night, something inside me broke, but another part of me woke up. It was the moment I realized I had mistaken abuse for love. But before I tell you what happened after that night, let me take you back to where it all began. Maybe then you'll understand how I ended up loving the very person who destroyed me. I was 27 when I had Daniel. My husband, George, had already left me by then. He said I was too soft, that I'd never be strong enough for this world. He walked out one morning and never looked back. I remember holding baby Daniel in my arms, promising him I'd never abandon him like his father did. I told him, "You'll always have me no matter what." And I meant it. We didn't have much. I worked at a small bakery in town, waking up before sunrise to knead dough, then coming home tired but smiling just to see Daniel's face. He was my sunshine, my reason for everything. He used to hug me so tight that I'd forget how hard life was. But as the years went by, something started changing. When Daniel turned 13, he began to pull away. He didn't smile much anymore. He stayed out late and talked back when I asked him where he'd been. The boy who once told me, "You're the best mom in the world," now rolled his eyes and said, "You wouldn't understand." At first, I thought it was just teenage mood swings. I told myself, he'll grow out of it. Boys can be difficult sometimes. But I was wrong. The first time he shouted at me, I remember freezing in shock. It was over dinner, just a simple night. I had made his favorite stew, but he threw the spoon down and yelled, "Can't you cook something normal for once?" His words cut deep. I laughed nervously and said, "I'm sorry, honey. I thought you liked it." He just glared at me and stormed off. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. He was upset about school, maybe something happened with friends. I convinced myself it wasn't his fault. Because mothers are supposed to forgive, right? We're supposed to love our children no matter what. But the shouting became daily. Then came the insults. "You're useless. You're pathetic. No wonder Dad left you." Every word felt like a knife twisting in my chest. But I stayed quiet. I smiled through the pain because I thought love meant staying even when it hurt. And then one day, the shouting turned into something worse. He was 17 then, taller and stronger than me. I had just asked him to help me carry groceries from the car. He snapped, shouting that I was nagging him. Before I could even blink, he shoved me hard against the wall. The shock left me frozen. My son, the same boy I once rocked to sleep, who used to cling to my legs when he was scared, had just hurt me. He stared at me, eyes wide like he couldn't believe what he'd done. For a moment, I saw guilt there. But then he turned away and muttered, "You made me do it." That night, I cried quietly so he wouldn't hear me. I told myself, he's just angry. He doesn't mean it. I held on to that lie, because I didn't want to lose him too. Years passed, and the abuse continued. Sometimes he would apologize, bring me flowers, or say, "I'm sorry, Mom. I just get so angry." And I would forgive him every time. Because deep down, I still saw that little boy who used to hug me and say, "You're my hero." But with every apology came another bruise, another broken heart, another night of tears. I stopped visiting friends because I didn't want them to see the marks. I told them I slipped or bumped into something. I isolated myself completely. My world became smaller, just the walls of our home and the shadow of my son's temper. Yet I stayed. Because I thought I was doing the right thing. Because I thought love meant sacrifice. Because I was afraid of being alone. One evening on his 30th birthday, I made a special dinner. I spent the whole day cooking his favorite meal, hoping maybe, just maybe, we could sit and eat together like old times. But when he came home, he was already drunk. He pushed the food off the table and shouted that I'd embarrassed him in front of his friends by calling earlier to ask if he was coming home. I froze again, like I always did. But that night, when he hit me across the face, something inside me shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I didn't know this man anymore. He wasn't my little boy. He wasn't the child I raised with love. He was a stranger. And I knew deep down that if I didn't do something soon one day, he might hurt me so badly that I wouldn't wake up. That night, I sat on the bed, holding an old photo of him as a smiling toddler. I whispered through my tears, "Where did you go, Daniel? What happened to you?" Then I heard a crash in the living room, glass breaking, footsteps stomping. My heart raced. He was home again, drunk and angry. He shouted, "Mom, where are you? You think you can ignore me now?" I held my breath, shaking, as his footsteps grew louder. And then, the door slammed open. The door slammed open so hard that the frame shook. Daniel stood there, his eyes bloodshot, his breath heavy with alcohol. A bottle dangled from his hand, half empty and dripping onto the floor. For a moment, I couldn't move. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like the whole room could hear it. "Why didn't you answer me?" he shouted, his voice thick and angry. "You think you can just ignore me in my own house?" His own house. That's what he called it now. Even though I had paid every bill, bought every piece of furniture, worked 2 jobs just to keep the roof over our heads. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words got stuck in my throat. I was just in my room," I said quietly, my voice shaking. He threw the bottle against the wall. It shattered, and glass flew everywhere. I gasped, covering my face with my hands as small pieces of glass hit the blanket. "Don't lie to me," he roared. "You always do this. You make me look crazy." I felt tears burning my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not this time. Something in me, something small, but strong, told me to stay calm. If I cried, it would only make him angrier. "Daniel," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Please sit down. Let's talk." He froze, staring at me with that same wild look. Then slowly he turned away and kicked the wall. "There's nothing to talk about. You just make everything worse." I stayed quiet. After a while he stormed out again, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. I waited until I heard his car leave the driveway before I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My hands were shaking as I cleaned up the glass. I thought, this isn't living. This is surviving. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about how far we'd fallen. I remembered when Daniel was 5. How he used to climb into my lap and ask me to tell him bedtime stories. How he'd kiss my cheek and say, "Mommy, you're my best friend." What happened to that little boy? I blamed myself. I thought maybe I spoiled him too much. Maybe I was too soft after his father left. Maybe if I had been stricter, he wouldn't have turned out like this. But another part of me whispered something I'd never allowed myself to think before. "It's not your fault." Still, I wasn't ready to believe it. Not yet. The next morning, I put on long sleeves to cover the bruises and went to the market. I tried to smile at the neighbors, but one of them, Mrs. Green, stopped me. She was an old friend from church, gentle and kind. "Mary, dear, are you all right?" she asked softly. "You look so tired lately." I smiled weakly. "I'm fine, just haven't been sleeping much." She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me. "You know, you can always talk to me. About anything." I wanted to tell her everything. How my son screamed at me. How I walked on eggshells in my own home. But the shame was too heavy. What kind of mother admits her own child hurts her? So I just nodded and walked away. When I got home, Daniel was sitting on the couch. He looked calm, almost normal. He said, "Mom, I'm sorry about last night. I didn't mean to scare you." I forced a smile. It's all right, Daniel. I know you didn't mean it. He hugged me, and for a moment, I felt relief. I wanted to believe this was the last time. That my son was changing. But that peace didn't last long. A few days later, he lost his job. I found him sitting in the dark, staring at the floor. When I asked what happened, he snapped. It's your fault. You bring me bad luck. Before I could answer, he threw his phone across the room, narrowly missing my face. I froze again, the sound of the crash echoing through the house. Then he stood up, breathing hard. Maybe if you weren't so pathetic, things would be different. That word, pathetic, cut deeper than anything. I felt something inside me crumble. That night, after he went to sleep, I sat in the kitchen staring at my reflection in the window. My face looked older, tired. My hands trembled. I whispered to myself, why am I still here? And that was when I heard the soft creak of the hallway floor. I turned slowly and saw Daniel standing there, watching me. His eyes were cold. What did you say? He asked quietly. I didn't say anything, I stammered. He stepped closer, and the kitchen light flickered above us. You think I don't hear you talking behind my back? You're planning something, aren't you? My mouth went dry. I shook my head quickly. No, Daniel, I would never. But before I could finish, he slammed his hand down on the table so hard the dishes jumped. I flinched, heart racing. Don't lie to me, he shouted. I stood up slowly, backing away. Please, son. I'm not lying. He grabbed my wrist, squeezing it tight. I winced in pain. You always say that, he hissed. You always act innocent. I could feel my pulse pounding under his grip. Let go, I whispered. Please, Daniel, you're hurting me. He stared at me for a long moment, then suddenly pushed me backward. I hit the counter and gasped, clutching my side. He stepped closer again, towering over me. You think you can talk to me like I'm a child? Tears filled my eyes. I don't think that, I swear. I just want you to be happy. Something in his expression softened for a second, but only for a second. Then he turned away, muttering, You make me do this. You always make me angry. He stormed off to his room, slamming the door. I slid to the floor, holding my side, and whispered through tears. No, Daniel. I didn't make you do this. You chose to. For the first time, I let myself say it out loud. And that night, something changed inside me. It wasn't strength yet, but it was the beginning of it. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. But I didn't know what to do. Then, just as I started to drift into a shaky sleep, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Daniel's voice, outside on the phone. She's starting to talk too much, he said. Maybe it's time I teach her a lesson she'll never forget. My hands went cold when I heard those words. Maybe it's time I teach her a lesson she'll never forget. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo in my ears. My body trembled from fear. I moved quietly to the window and peeked through the curtain. Daniel was standing outside near the car, talking on his phone, his face shadowed by the streetlight. I couldn't hear the rest of his words, but the tone, the anger, was enough to send chills down my spine. Was he serious? Was he planning to hurt me? I didn't know. But after 16 years of fear, I knew better than to take chances. I waited until I heard his footsteps come back inside. He slammed his door shut, muttering under his breath. Then silence. I sat on my bed thinking of what to do. I wanted to call the police, but what would I tell them? That my son might hurt me? They'd ask for proof. They'd probably tell me it was a family matter. And part of me still couldn't believe it had come to this. That I was afraid of the same child I once held to my chest when he had nightmares. But the truth was right in front of me. My son wasn't my protector anymore. He had become my biggest fear. I waited until the morning, pretending everything was normal. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast like always. When Daniel came out of his room, I forced a smile. Good morning, sweetheart, I said softly. He didn't answer. He just grabbed his mug, poured coffee and muttered, I'll be out late tonight. All right, I replied, trying to sound calm, though my hands were shaking. When he left, I exhaled deeply. Then I sat down and cried quietly into my hands. I knew I had to do something. If I stayed, I might not live long enough to regret it. So that afternoon, I took out a small notebook and started writing everything down. Every insult, every bruise, every night of fear. I wrote it all, as if the pages could finally carry the pain I'd been holding in for years. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but writing it made me feel like I was taking back a little piece of my power. Later that day, I went to the church. I hadn't been there in months. When I walked in, the smell of candles and the sound of the choir made my eyes fill with tears. I sat at the back pew and prayed quietly. Lord, I don't want to hate my son, I whispered. But I can't keep living like this. Please show me a way. When I looked up, Pastor Williams was standing a few feet away, smiling gently. Mary, he said softly, it's been a long time. I nodded, trying to smile. Yes, Pastor. I've just been busy. He sat beside me. You seem tired. Is everything all right at home? I froze. I wanted to say yes like I always did. But this time the lie wouldn't come out. My lips trembled. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. He handed me a tissue and said, You don't have to tell me everything. But please don't carry this alone. I cried harder then. It was the first time in 16 years that someone had seen my pain. So I told him everything. The shouting, the hitting, the fear. I told him how I stayed because I thought love meant never giving up on your child. He listened quietly, nodding. When I finished, he said, Mary, love doesn't mean letting someone destroy you. God gave you life. That means your life has value, just as much as his. I wiped my tears. His words stuck with me. Your life has value. Before I left, he gave me the number of a women's shelter. If things get worse, call them, he said. You're not alone. That night, Daniel came home late again. He was drunk. I could hear his footsteps stumbling down the hallway. I sat still, pretending to be asleep. But my heart was racing. He opened my door slowly. The room was dark except for the faint glow from the streetlight outside. Mom, he said, his voice thick and unsteady. Why were you talking to Pastor Williams today? My stomach dropped. How did you know that? I whispered. He stepped closer, his face half hidden in shadow. People talk, Mom. You think no one sees you crying at that church. I was just praying, I said quickly. That's all. He leaned closer. Don't lie to me. I could smell the alcohol on his breath. His hand clenched into a fist. Daniel, please, I whispered. You're scaring me. He laughed quietly, a cold, bitter laugh that made my skin crawl. You should be scared. Maybe that'll finally make you listen. Before I could move, he grabbed my arm hard. Pain shot through me. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. Let me go. I cried. Stop shouting, he hissed. You always make me look bad. You think you can tell people I'm a monster? Tears streamed down my face. I didn't say anything, Daniel. I swear. He shoved me back, and I stumbled against the dresser. Something inside me snapped, not just in my body, but in my heart. I screamed. Enough. Enough, Daniel. He froze. He had never heard me raise my voice before. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then, without a word, he turned and walked out of the room. The door slammed, and the house fell silent again. I slid to the floor, shaking, sobbing, my whole body aching. But for the first time, I wasn't just crying out of fear. I was crying because I knew something had changed. I couldn't go back. Not after that night. When the morning came, I packed a small bag. I put in my Bible, a few clothes, and the notebook I had written everything in. I looked around the house one last time. Every wall, every picture frame, every memory, tainted by years of pain. Then I opened the door quietly and stepped outside. The sun was just rising, painting the sky with soft pink light. The air was cool on my face. For a moment I felt free. But as I walked down the street, I heard a voice behind me. Loud and angry. Mom, where do you think you're going? I froze. My heart dropped. I turned slowly, and there he was, standing on the porch, his face twisted in fury. And this time he wasn't just angry. He was holding something in his hand. Something metal. The morning air suddenly felt heavy, thick with fear. I stared at the object in Daniel's hand. It was a metal wrench, the kind he used when fixing things around the house. His knuckles were white around it, his jaw tight with anger. Daniel. I whispered, my voice trembling. Put that down. He took a step toward me, his face dark and cold. You were going to leave me, weren't you? I backed away slowly, clutching my small bag against my chest. I just needed to clear my head, that's all. Don't lie to me, he shouted. Birds scattered from a nearby tree, the sound of their wings breaking the silence. You were going to run away, just like Dad did. You were going to abandon me. His words stabbed through my heart. Abandon him? I had spent 16 years staying, even when it destroyed me. Daniel, please, I said softly. I've never left you. I was only trying to find peace. I can't live like this anymore. His eyes widened, wild, confused, and hurt. Peace. You think you can have peace without me? He took another step closer. I could see his hand trembling as he gripped the wrench tighter. My breath came out in short gasps. Son, I love you. But this isn't love. You're hurting me. Shut up, he barked. Don't say that. You always make me feel like the bad guy. He swung the wrench through the air, not to hit me yet, but close enough that I felt the wind from it brush my cheek. I flinched. That was when I saw Mrs. Green, my neighbor, standing at her gate. Her eyes went wide in horror. Mary, are you okay? She shouted. Daniel froze, startled. He turned toward her. Go back inside, he yelled. This isn't your business. But Mrs. Green didn't move. Instead, she pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. Daniel cursed and dropped the wrench. He glared at me, his eyes full of rage and betrayal. You did this. You made them see me like this. Then he turned and ran back into the house, slamming the door. I stood there, trembling from head to toe, unable to move. Mrs. Green ran over, wrapping her arm around me. Come on, dear. Come with me. You're not going back in there. I could barely speak, my voice weak and shaky. He's my son. She squeezed my shoulder gently. I know, Mary. But sometimes love means saving yourself. The police came minutes later. I watched as they knocked on my door, then went inside to find Daniel. I could hear his shouting from outside. He kept yelling, she's lying. I didn't do anything. They eventually took him away, still shouting my name, calling me a traitor, saying he'd never forgive me. And as the car drove off, I felt my knees give out. Mrs. Green caught me before I hit the ground. I cried in her arms for what felt like hours. Tears of grief, of guilt, but also somewhere deep down, tears of relief. For the first time in 16 years, the house was quiet. Too quiet. That night, I stayed at Mrs. Green's. She made me tea and sat with me while I tried to make sense of everything. Do you think I did the right thing? I asked her. My voice cracked. He's my child, but I feel like I just lost him. She sighed softly. You didn't lose him, Mary. You saved both of you. Maybe now he'll finally get help. But if you hadn't spoken up today, it could have been worse. You could have been gone. Her words echoed in my head long after she went to bed. Gone. I looked out the window at my house across the street. The lights were still on, the door slightly open. It didn't look like a home anymore. It looked like a memory of something that once was, of love that had turned into pain. That night, I made a promise to myself. If I ever saw Daniel again, I would still love him, but I'd love him from afar. I wouldn't go back. Not ever. I deserved peace. I just didn't know that peace would come at a painful cost. Because 2 weeks later, he came back. It was a rainy evening. I was sitting in Mrs. Green's living room, reading my Bible, when the doorbell rang. She was in the kitchen, so I stood up to answer it. When I opened the door, I froze. It was Daniel. His clothes were damp, his eyes red, and his voice quiet. Mom. Every instinct told me to close the door, but my heart wouldn't let me. He looked so broken, so lost. Daniel, I said softly. What are you doing here? I just wanted to see you, he murmured. I'm sorry. For everything. His voice shook. The police made me go to counseling. They said I needed help. And they were right. I didn't know what to say. I searched his face for anger, but this time, all I saw was shame. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded paper. This is my apology letter. My therapist told me to write one. I took it with trembling hands and unfolded it. His handwriting was messy, But the words, oh the words. Mom, I hurt you. I made you afraid. I became everything I swore I'd never be. You didn't deserve that. You gave me life, and I gave you pain. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I'm trying to change. Tears filled my eyes. I looked up at him. Daniel. He stepped back slightly, afraid to come closer. I'm not asking to come home. I just wanted you to see I'm sorry. I'm going to a center out of town to get better. I needed to tell you before I go. I nodded slowly, my heart aching and healing all at once. I hope you do, son. I really do. He smiled weakly. You always said love meant never giving up. I used to hate that. But now I understand. You didn't give up on me. You just finally chose yourself. Before I could speak, he turned and walked away into the rain. I stood there watching him go, the raindrops mixing with my tears. It was the last time I saw him for a long while. Weeks passed. I started volunteering at the church again, helping other women who were living in silence like I had. Some cried, some stayed quiet, but all of them shared the same pain. The kind that hides behind closed doors. Whenever they asked me how I found the strength to leave, I'd tell them. Because I realized I deserved peace, not pain. Years later, Daniel came back, not as the angry man I once feared, but as someone who had finally changed. He hugged me for the first time in years, and this time, it didn't hurt. He whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom." I smiled through tears and said, "No, Daniel. Thank you for finding your way back." And that's when I truly understood something I wished I had learned long ago. Love isn't staying through the pain. It's knowing when to walk away so healing can begin. Keycap #life lesson. Even those we love most can hurt us deeply. But no one, not even family, has the right to destroy your peace. Walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's the only way to truly love yourself. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real, emotional stories that remind us all. No matter how dark life gets, peace is always worth fighting for. Broken Heart Sparkles.